You have already paid your dues, and yet too many people in their later years forget that truth. They live as if the work is still unfinished, as if the debt is still owed, as if the world still demands from them the sacrifices they made for decades. But pause for a moment and really think about it. You have given your time, your strength, your energy, your heart. You have raised families. You have worked jobs. You have taken care of responsibilities. You have put others before yourself more times than you can count. Every sleepless night, every long day, every compromise you made in order to ensure that someone else had comfort, had food, had education, had stability. That was you paying your dues. And there comes a point in life where the constant pouring out has to be balanced by receiving, where the constant sacrifice must give way to self-honoring. If you do not allow yourself to recognize that you've done enough, you'll live as if the only way to justify your existence is by giving everything away until there's nothing left of you. The problem is not that people don't recognize your sacrifices. Deep down, they know. The problem is that you may not fully recognize it yourself. You have normalized selflessness to the point where it feels selfish to stop, where it feels wrong to finally say, now it's my turn. But think about it carefully. What's selfish about honoring the life you've already lived? What's selfish about resting in the truth that you've already given so much? If you build a house brick by brick, and it took you a lifetime, would it be selfish to sit inside that house and enjoy it? No, it would be the most natural thing in the world. And yet so many elders continue to give the bricks away even after the house is built, until their own shelter is crumbling. You have to shift your perspective. Life is not just about sacrifice. It is about rhythm, flow, balance. You give and you also receive. You work and you also rest. You pour out and you also replenish. Old age is not a curse. It is a gift, but it only becomes a gift if you honor yourself enough to step in that receiving energy. If you keep sacrificing, you rob yourself of the very reward that life has been preparing you for. You cannot be at peace while still operating in the same mindset that drained you in your younger years. There must come a point where you look yourself in the mirror and say, I've paid my dues. I've done enough. I deserve to enjoy my life now. And let's be honest, no one else is going to give you that permission. The world is always ready to take more, ask for more, lean on you more. The very people you've given everything to will unconsciously keep asking if you don't set the boundary. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means you've trained them to rely on your sacrifice. When you don't say, no, they assume there is always more you can give. But your body, your mind, your soul, they know the truth. They know it's time for a new chapter. They know that if you keep pouring into everyone else's cup while leaving yours empty, you will end up resenting the very people you love, not because they failed you, but because you failed yourself. There is a quiet dignity in knowing when to stop. There is a wisdom in saying no, not out of anger, but out of deep respect for your own life. You don't owe endless sacrifice to anyone. You have already given the most valuable thing you had, your time. You can make money again. You can buy material possessions again, but you cannot rewind the years you've already lived. Those years were your currency, and you spent them raising children, supporting family, working jobs, showing up for people, and doing the hard work of being there when no one else was. That was your payment. That was your contribution. That was your gift. And now, in the later years of your life, you must learn to accept the return. You are not being selfish by resting, by choosing yourself, by protecting your energy. You are acknowledging the truth that life has seasons. Just as the farmer does not spend his entire life only planting seeds, there comes a season for harvest. You too must recognize that this is your season to harvest, to sit in the sun, to enjoy the fruit of your labor, to breathe in peace without guilt, to experience joy without apology. If you keep sacrificing, you will miss the very abundance you've earned. You will miss the harvest that belongs to you. You have already paid your dues in full, and continue to pay beyond that is not noble. It is unnecessary. It depletes you, and it steals from the life you were meant to enjoy now. This stage of life is not about proving anything, not about carrying the burdens of everyone else, not about saying yes when you mean no. It is about releasing, receiving, and remembering that you too deserve to live fully. Your worth is not tied to how much more you can sacrifice. Your worth is already established by the decades you've lived, the battles you've fought, and the love you've given. When you realize this, you step into freedom, the freedom to finally live for yourself without guilt, without hesitation, without apology. Self-neglect is the greatest injustice you can commit against yourself. Yet it is often disguised as love, duty, or sacrifice. For years, maybe decades, you may have been conditioned to believe that the more you give, the better person you are. That the true measure of love is how much of yourself you're willing to pour out until there's nothing left. But when you constantly give while ignoring your own needs, you don't just neglect yourself, you slowly erase yourself. And that erasure doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve your children, your partner, your community, and it certainly doesn't serve you. What you call selflessness can often be another name for self-destruction. Think about it. When you skip meals to make sure others are fed, when you ignore your own health appointments to save money for someone else, when you silence your desires because you believe someone else are more important, you aren't just giving. You're teaching yourself that your life, your body, your happiness has less value. That silent message seeps deep into your subconscious until it becomes your operating system. I don't matter as much. My needs come last. My dreams can wait. And when you live this way long enough, you forget that you were born with the same right to joy, the same right to health, the same right to peace as anyone else. The greatest injustice isn't in what others do to you. It's in what you continually allow yourself to do against yourself. When you say yes to everyone while saying no to yourself. When you carry burdens that were never meant to be yours. When you stretch yourself thin for people who rarely notice your exhaustion. You commit an act of injustice against your own spirit. And the truth is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give light when your flame is burned out. You cannot be the pillar of strength for others if your foundation is crumbling. Self-neglect doesn't make you strong. It makes you fragile beneath the surface. And sooner or later the cracks will show. There is nothing noble about running yourself into the ground. There is nothing virtuous about sacrificing your health, your joy, your peace for people who will move on with their lives even if you collapse. That might sound harsh, but it's reality. The world doesn't stop when you break down. People adjust. They find someone else they learn to do for themselves. And you're left wondering why you wasted so much of your life ignoring yourself. That's the injustice, giving away years of your vitality for people who could have learned to stand on their own while you denied yourself the life you were meant to experience. When you neglect yourself, you create a cycle of silent resentment. You may smile on the outside, but inside you feel drained, unappreciated, invisible. You feel like people don't value you when in reality you taught them not to by not valuing yourself first. People mirror what you allow. If you constantly show them that you always say yes, always show up, always give, even at the expense of your well-being, then that becomes their expectation. They stop asking if you're okay. They stop checking if you need rest. They stop considering your limits because you never said any. And why I might think this is love, it's actually self-betrayal disguised as devotion. Your body keeps the score of every act of neglect. The headache is you ignore, the fatigue you push through. The quiet sadness you bury, those are signals that you're out of balance. But when you keep sacrificing, you silence those signals until they become louder in the form of illness, depression, or emotional breakdown. And then you look back and realize that if you had simply honored yourself along the way, if you had simply paused to rest, to breathe, to say no, to choose yourself, things could have been different. That's why it's the greatest injustice. Not because others are doing it to you, but because you're doing it to yourself every time you neglect your own needs. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's justice. It's reclaiming the truth that your life is as valuable as anyone else's. It's refusing to be invisible in your own story. It's realizing that taking care of yourself allows you to show up in a way that is authentic, not forced, full, not empty, loving, not resentful. When you stop neglecting yourself, you stop teaching others that's okay to overlook you. You reset the tone of how people interact with you, and you begin to live with dignity instead of depletion. The world has taught many people that selflessness is a virtue, but there's a difference between being giving and being negligent toward yourself. Giving is powerful when it comes from overflow, when you are so full of life, love, and energy that you naturally extend it to others. But when you give from emptiness, it's not love, it's survival. It's not generosity, it's fear. It's fear that you won't be loved if you say no, fear that you'll be rejected if you set boundaries, fear that your worth is tied to your usefulness, and living in fear is the ultimate injustice against your spirit, because you were not born to live in chains of obligation. You were born to live free, to express yourself, to enjoy your journey, to honor the vessel that carries you. Every time you deny yourself that freedom, every time you silence your voice, every time you trade your peace for someone else's comfort, you cut yourself short. Self-neglect strips away the richness of your later years and leaves you with regret instead of fulfillment. And regret is the heaviest weight a person can carry, heavier than any responsibility you've ever held for someone else. Energy is a precious currency in old age, more valuable than money, more valuable than possessions. Because without it, you can't enjoy anything you've worked for. When you're younger, you can push through exhaustion. You can recover quickly. You can burn the candle at both ends and still find a way to keep moving. But when you reach later stages of life, every drop of energy matters. Your body doesn't bounce back the same way. Your mind requires more rest, and your spirit longs for peace rather than chaos. That's why you must treat your energy like a treasure, not something to be handed out freely to anyone who demands it. Too often, people in their later years keep giving away their limited energy to others, leaving themselves drained, weak and empty, with nothing left for their own joy. Think about how you spend your energy every day. The phone calls where someone only wants to unload their problems but never listens to yours. The family members who expect you to always be available, to fix things, to show up no matter how tired you are. The favors you say yes to out of guilt even though your body is begging you to rest. Every one of those choices is a transaction, and the currency you're spending is your life force. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. You can earn more money, but you cannot manufacture more time or energy once it's depleted. And if you keep wasting it on people and situations that don't nourish you, you rob yourself the chance to use that precious energy on the things that bring you peace and happiness. There's a reason why people in their older years often feel a deep need for quiet, for stillness, for simplicity. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's your soul recognizing that you no longer have the luxury to waste energy on drama. on toxic relationships, on endless obligations. Your energy to be invested carefully, like a sacred bank account. If you withdraw too much, you end up bankrupt, not financially, but emotionally, physically, spiritually. And when you're bankrupt in energy, you can't even enjoy the life you've built. That's the tragedy. Spending years sacrificing, working, providing, only to arrive at old age too exhausted to savor it. Protecting your energy means learning the power of no. It means recognizing that not every problem in the world is yours to solve. Not every request deserves a yes. Not every relationship deserves access to you. There are people who will take and take until you are empty. And the truth is, they may not even notice you're running on fumes, but you notice, your body notices, your heart notices that heaviness you feel when you wake up. That awareness that doesn't go away, that irritation that lingers beneath the surface, those are signs that your energy is being misused. And the longer you ignore those signals, the more costly it becomes. Every ounce of energy you give away should be a conscious choice, not a default habit. You need to start asking yourself, is this worth my energy? Does this bring me peace or does it drain me? Will this leave me stronger or weaker? Because at this stage of life, you can't afford to keep spending recklessly. You wouldn't hand out your last bit of savings to anyone who asked without thinking. So why hand out your last bits of energy? Your energy is your wealth now, and you must guard it with the same seriousness you once guarded your career, your family, your home. When you use your energy wisely, something powerful happens. You begin to feel lighter, freer, more alive. You start noticing the small joys again. You find pleasure in a walk, in a conversation, in a moment of silence. You're no longer rushing, no longer overextending, no longer feeling guilty for not being everything to everyone. You become more intentional with your time, and that intention brings fulfillment. This is how life is meant to be lived in old age, not as a constant drain, but as a steady flow of peace and joy that comes from honoring your limits. There's another truth that many overlook when you protect your energy. You actually empower others by saying no. You give people the opportunity to grow, to solve their own problems, to carry their own weight. If you keep sacrificing your energy, you rob them of the lessons they need to learn. You keep them dependent while draining yourself. But when you step back, when you conserve your energy for yourself, you're not abandoning them. You're teaching them resilience. You're showing them what boundaries look like, and you're modeling self-respect. That's a gift far greater than endless sacrifice. In old age, your energy is no longer meant to be scattered in 1,000 directions. It's meant to be focused inward, toward healing, toward joy, toward peace. It's meant to fuel your passions, your hobbies, your self-care, your quiet moments of reflection. It's meant to sustain your spirit, not deplete it. You've already spent years spending your energy on others, raising children, working jobs, building households, sacrificing sleep and health. You've given that currency away for decades. Now, you must learn to invest it in yourself. Because every time you choose to protect your energy, you're saying to yourself, I matter. My life matters. My peace matters. And that shift in perspective changes everything. You teach others how to treat you, whether you realize it or not. And this truth becomes even more important in old age. The way you respond, the boundaries you set, the standards you maintain, all of these are silent lessons to the people around you. If you constantly sacrifice yourself, if you give without limits, if you allow others to take from you without question, you are teaching them that it is acceptable to overlook your needs. You are teaching them that your time is less valuable, your energy is expendable, and your desires don't count. And people, even the ones who love you, will follow the patterns you allow. They may not even mean harm, but if you keep showing them that your life revolves around their comfort, they will keep expecting it. Many elders fall into this trap because they spent years serving their families, putting others first, and believing that love means endless giving. But love without boundaries is not love. It is servitude. True love involves mutual respect, and respect can only exist when you make it clear that your well-being matters. When you never draw the line, when you always say yes, when you stretch yourself thinner and thinner to keep everyone else happy, you're silently teaching others that your needs are not important. And once that belief is established, it becomes the unspoken rule of every relationship you have. Think about the way children observe their parents. If they grow up watching you neglect yourself, they learn that neglecting yourself is normal. If they see you always exhausted, always stressed, always sacrificing without ever resting or receiving, they learn that this is the role you're supposed to play. But if they see you set boundaries, if they see you say no when you need to, if they see you honor your health and your peace, they learn something very different. They learn that self-respect is essential. They learn that caring for yourself is not selfish, but necessary. And those lessons shape the way they treat you and the way they treat themselves when they grow older. In old age, you are no longer just living for yourself. You are leaving a blueprint. Every interaction you have is a message about what you will tolerate, what you will allow, what you will accept. If you continue to give everything away, people will not magically wake up one day and say, let's stop asking, let's start giving back. They will continue to do what they have always done because you have taught them that this is acceptable. The only way to change the dynamic is to change yourself. To stop teaching people that you are available for endless sacrifice. To start teaching them that you too require care, love, and respect. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are guides to show others how to love you properly. When you say no, you are not rejecting the person. You are affirming yourself. When you ask for space, you are not being difficult. You are being clear about your needs. When you refuse to take on responsibilities that are not yours, you are not abandoning your family. You are teaching them independence. And every time you do this, you send a powerful message. I value myself, and I expect you to value me too. The problem is, too many people believe that saying no will push others away. They fear rejection. They fear conflict. They fear being seen as selfish. But the truth is, saying yes to everything doesn't bring love. It brings exploitation, even if unintentional. And over time, that exploitation breeds resentment. You may not voice it, but you feel it inside when people keep asking and you keep giving. When they keep taking and you keep emptying yourself, that quiet resentment corrodes your spirit and it creates distance between you and the very people you're trying to help. But when you set boundaries, when you demand respect, you actually strengthen relationships. You replace resentment with clarity, exhaustion with balance, invisibility with presence. Respect is not something people give you automatically. It is something you establish by showing them how to treat you. If you sit quietly while people interrupt your peace, they will keep interrupting. If you give away your last ounce of strength while smiling, they will keep asking for more. If you let others dictate how you spend your time, they will assume your time belongs to them. But the moment you shift, the moment you begin teaching them a new way, by protecting your energy, by refusing to overextend, by prioritizing your well-being, they begin to adjust. Some may resist at first, but eventually they learn. They learn because you taught them. You cannot expect people to value your time if you don't value it yourself. You cannot expect people to honor your rest if you never honor it. You cannot expect others to see you as important if you keep showing them that you see yourself as less important. Everything starts with you. The way you treat yourself becomes a standard of how others treat you. And in old age, when your energy is precious and your peace is sacred, you can no longer afford to send the wrong message. You must teach others, not with lectures, but with action, with the way you carry yourself, the way you say no without guilt, the way you prioritize your health, the way you refuse to shrink to make others comfortable. The truth is, people will always test the limits of what you allow, not because they are cruel, but because human nature follows the path of least resistance. If you make it easy for people to take advantage of your kindness, many will. If you make it clear that you expect respect, they will adjust their behavior. The choice is yours. You can keep teaching people that you are willing to sacrifice endlessly, or you can start teaching them that your life matters too. And once you shift that lesson, everything about the way people treat you begins to change. You deserve fulfillment, not just survival, and yet too many people reach old age only to find themselves living in a state of endurance instead of enjoyment. They wake up each day going through motions, handling responsibilities, giving their time and energy away, but they never pause long enough to ask, am I truly fulfilled? Survival is about making it from one day to the next, about covering the basics, about existing. Fulfillment is about living with purpose, about feeling alive, about knowing that the years you have left are not being wasted in constant sacrifice, but are being invested in joy, peace, and experiences that nourish your soul. After decades of labor, raising families, providing for others, and carrying responsibilities on your back, your later years should not be reduced to mere survival. They should be the season of fulfillment. The reward for everything you poured out before. Survival keeps you on edge. It keeps you worrying about the next bill, the next favor someone asks, the next crisis in your family. Survival means you're always reacting, never resting, never feeling truly free. Fulfillment, on the other hand, allows you to wake up in the morning with gratitude instead of anxiety, to spend your time doing things that bring you joy rather than drain you, to embrace life with curiosity rather than dread. Too many people have been conditioned to believe that old age is only about enduring aches, limitations, or loneliness, but that's not the truth. The truth is, old age can be a time of freedom, wisdom, and deep satisfaction if you stop handing away your joy for the sake of everyone else's comfort. Think about all the years you've lived. How many times did you put your dreams on hold because someone else needed you? How many vacations did you skip? How many hobbies did you abandon? How many desires did you bury because life demanded sacrifice? That sacrifice may have been necessary at the time. Children had to be raised, bills had to be paid, families had to be supported. But now, if you continue to live only in that mindset, you rob yourself of the very reason you made those sacrifices in the first place. You didn't work hard all those years so you could spend the rest of your life merely existing. You worked hard so that one day you could actually live. Fulfillment means giving yourself permission to embrace that day now. Fulfillment doesn't always require wealth or luxury. It requires presence, intention, and freedom from unnecessary burdens. It might be as simple as taking long walks without rushing back to obligations, as simple as reconnecting with hobbies you abandoned decades ago, as simple as spending your mornings in peace instead of answering every demand placed on you. Fulfillment is the feeling of being aligned with yourself, of finally choosing what makes you happy rather than what keeps everyone else satisfied. And in old age, that choice becomes more important than ever because time is no longer something to waste. Every day is precious, and each moment spent in survival mode is a moment stolen from the joy you've earned. You must allow yourself to redefine what living means. Living is not the same as breathing. Living is about tasting the richness of life, about pursuing curiosity, about enjoying the fruits of the seeds you planted long ago. Survival tells you, just get through the day. Fulfillment tells you, make today matter. And when you begin to shift into fulfillment, you realize that saying no to unnecessary sacrifice is not selfish, it is essential. Because the truth is, the world will always have another request, another responsibility, another way to drain you if you let it. But fulfillment only arrives when you decide that your joy is just as important as anyone else's needs. There's a quiet tragedy in watching people spend their final years as if they are still paying debts that no longer exist. They gave everything when they were younger, and yet they still live as though they owe the world more. But you don't owe more, you owe yourself. You owe yourself peace, joy, rest, laughter, exploration, and comfort. You owe yourself the chance to sit with no guilt, to travel if you want, to say no without explanation, to finally breathe without the weight of obligation crushing your chest. Fulfillment is about granting yourself the life you delayed for so long. Ask yourself what makes you feel alive. Ask yourself what brings you peace. Ask yourself what you've always wanted to do but never gave yourself permission to try. These answers are not frivolous. They are the keys to fulfillment. And once you begin to live from that place, you discover that old age is not a decline, but a refinement. It's a stage of life where you finally separate what truly matters from all the noise. Where you finally stop running in circles of survival and start walking the straight path of joy. You deserve more than just surviving day to day. You deserve mornings that feel light, evenings that feel peaceful, and days that leave you smiling. You deserve to spend the rest of your life honoring the effort you gave in the past by enjoying the present fully. Fulfillment is not a luxury. It is a necessity, and when you step into it, you reclaim the dignity of your later years. Self-care is the greatest legacy you can leave behind because it teaches far more than words ever could. For years, maybe even for your entire life, you might have believed that your legacy was in what you gave to others, your time, your sacrifices, your money, your endless yes to every request. But the truth is, what shapes the lives of those around you most deeply is not only what you give them, but what you show them by the way you live. If you live in constant sacrifice, if you live in exhaustion, if you live in neglect of yourself, that is the example you hand down. You teach the next generation that love equals self-erasure. That responsibility means burnout. That growing old means disappearing into the shadows that everyone else's needs. But when you choose self-care, when you decide that your health, your peace, and your joy are non-negotiable, you send a different message. You show them that it is possible to love deeply without abandoning yourself, to care for others while still honoring your own well-being, to age with dignity and not depletion. Your children, your grandchildren, your community, they watch you more than they listen to you. They notice the way you move through life, the way you treat yourself, the way you either protect or abandon your own needs. And those silent lessons often become their operating system. If they see you constantly worn out, constantly giving until you have nothing left, they learn to follow the same pattern. They grow into adults who repeat the cycle of neglect because they believe it's what love and duty require. But if they see you resting when you're tired, saying no when you need to, prioritizing your health, enjoying your hobbies, protecting your peace, they learn that self-care is not selfish, but wise. They carry that lesson in their own lives, and it transforms not just them, but everyone they interact with. That's why self-care is a legacy. It multiplies across generations. Many people think a legacy only in terms of money, houses, possessions, or achievements. But what lasts the longest is not material. It's the example of how you live. Money can run out, possessions can break, but values, habits, and mindsets live on in the people who come after you. If your legacy is one of constant self-denial, then that becomes the standard. If your legacy is one of self-respect and balance, then that becomes the gift. Your family won't remember every sacrifice you made in detail, but they will remember the way you carried yourself, the way you honored yourself, the way you treated your own life as valuable. That memory becomes the model they follow when they reach the crossroads of their own decisions. In old age, self-care is not just about you. It's about the people who are watching you. If you collapse from exhaustion, if you spend your final years bitter and drained, what lesson are you leaving behind? You're showing them that giving without boundaries leads to emptiness. You're showing them that old age is a punishment, not a blessing. But if you choose differently, if you use your later years to demonstrate joy, peace, balance, and dignity, then your life becomes a living classroom. You leave behind not just stories, but a living example of how to grow older without losing yourself. That is a legacy no one can take. Self-care also allows you to be present in a way that endless sacrifice never can. When you are depleted, you may still show up physically, but emotionally you're absent. You may attend family gatherings. You may answer phone calls. You may fulfill requests, but you do it with a heavy heart, with resentment, with fatigue. But when you've cared for yourself first, when you're rested, when your spirit is nourished, then when you show up fully. You're present, you're joyful, you're engaged. And that presence is what people remember. They won't remember how many times you said yes out of obligation, but they will remember the glow in your face when you truly enjoyed being there. That glow is born out of self-care. There's another truth that cannot be ignored. When you neglect yourself, you force others to carry the weight of that neglect eventually. If you run your health in the ground, your family will have to deal with the consequences. If you suppress your joy until you're bitter, your relationships suffer. If you ignore your needs until you collapse, others are left to pick up the pieces. Neglect doesn't only harm you, it burdens the people around you. But when you practice self-care, you reduce that burden. You give them the gift of seeing you strong, seeing you peaceful, seeing you content. You give them fewer regrets, fewer worries, fewer heavy responsibilities. You give them the gift of an elder who valued their own life enough to preserve it. Self-care is not indulgence. It is stewardship. It is taking responsibility for the one life you've been given. It is recognizing that you cannot pour out love, wisdom, or presence if your own cup is empty. And when you make self-care your priority, you become a beacon. You show others what it means to honor life, to value time, to respect the body and mind you've been given. That light doesn't dim when you're gone. It lives on in the people who saw you shine. That is the true meaning of legacy. And it is built moment by moment, choice by choice, in the way you decide to treat yourself today.